This rhetoric is repeated very often, and so much so that I'm not trying to shame the initial poster. There is a common misconception that people were forced to work in concentration camps, which is wholly untrue. Any woman that worked there was not obliged to serve in the military, and often simply answered an ad looking for nurses or guards. Upon arrival, if she found the work disgusting, she could simply quit. At the end of the day, this was a paid residential job. During the war, German men were required to join the military. Keep in mind, this was the case for nearly every country involved in the war. Working at a concentration camp was seen as a somewhat cushy job, as they were not in harm's way like so many other men. There is no record of any man receiving punishment for deciding he couldn't work in a concentration camp. He would simply be transferred to other military duty. I once pointed this out, and someone tried to argue that this could involve being sent to the front, which meant death. Not only did many men survive the front, but most countries involved in the war required military service. Men in those countries served when the alternative was simply prison. So to say people would commit genocide because there was no other alternative but service seems hollow. We do know of 2 SS personnel who were actually involved in helping prisoners. Maria Stromberger was an Austrian nurse who signed up to work in Auschwitz solely to aid the prisoners. She ended up working for the resistance both in and out of the camp. She was key in helping prisoners gain access to intelligence and medical help. I will do a full video on her in the future. Another such person was Hans Munch, who was an SS doctor in Auschwitz. Although originally arrested after the war, he was let go after many former prisoners testified to his kindness. He also became friends with experiment survivor Eva Moses Kor and visited Auschwitz as well as attended events for the victims. He also testified to what happened in Auschwitz, even appearing in documentaries. He never used the excuse that they all seem to have, which is that they didn't realize the extent of the operation. It is probably true that most were not so incredibly cruel that they developed a reputation amongst inmates for it, but it also says something that there are only a handful of stories of people who were both kind and actively helped prisoners. One may even argue that most may not even have the inclination to commit such acts in isolation, but to say many were good and didn't believe in what was happening is definitely divorced from reality.